I stared at Chris's still body, numb with shock and grief. The heart monitor's flat line echoed through the room, a cruel reminder that the man I loved was gone forever. Just then, the door burst open. Emily stormed in, her face contorted with rage. "You think you can pretend to care for me now after everything you've done?" Her accusation felt like a slap in the face. I opened my mouth to respond, but what could I say? Our relationship had been strained for years, ever since I married her father. "I'm not your real mother, and I never will be," I stated, my voice trembling. It was a harsh truth, but one we both knew deep down. Emily sneered. "Don't act so innocent. You manipulated my dad from the start, worming your way into our lives. And for what? His money?" "That's not true," I protested, though a part of me wondered if she was right. Had I been blinded by Chris's wealth and status? No, I loved him, didn't I? "Save it," Emily spat. "I'm going to make sure you don't get a single cent. You're nothing without him." Her words cut deep, reigniting every insecurity and doubt I'd harbored over the years. As she stormed out, I sank into the chair beside Chris's bed, burying my face in my hands as sobs racked my body. How had things gone so wrong? When Chris and I first met, I'd been drawn to his kindness, his warmth. He made me feel alive in a way I hadn't experienced in years. And despite my initial reservations about dating a man with a child, I'd fallen hopelessly in love. But Emily had never accepted me. From the moment I stepped into her life, she viewed me as a threat, an intruder. No matter how hard I tried to connect with her, she shut me out, her teenage angst morphing into a cold, calculated cruelty as she grew older. And Chris, bless his soul, had been too soft on her, too eager to keep the peace. He'd enabled her behavior, siding with her against me time and again until I felt like an outsider in my own marriage. Now, with Chris gone, I was truly alone, facing the wrath of a vengeful stepdaughter who seemed determined to destroy me. As the weight of Emily's hatred bore down, I knew one thing for certain: the battle for Chris's legacy, for my very future, had only just begun. I met Chris at a company party, back when I was working in HR at a tech firm. He walked into the room, and it was like the air shifted. I couldn't take my eyes off him. His warm smile, the confident way he carried himself. When our eyes met, something sparked between us. After the party, I couldn't stop thinking about him. A few weeks later, we ran into each other at a cafe, and he asked me out. I said yes, despite the little voice in my head warning me about his complicated situation. On our first date, he was open about his past, his failed marriage, his struggle to connect with his daughter Emily after the divorce. I admired his honesty, his vulnerability. Over dinner, I found myself drawn to his values, his desire to be a better father and partner. The more time we spent together, the deeper I fell. Chris treated me with a tenderness and respect I'd rarely experienced in my years as a single woman. He made me feel cherished, special. But I couldn't ignore the shadow that loomed over our relationship, Emily. At 16, she was a sullen, resentful teenager who clearly blamed me for her parents' divorce. She refused to give me a chance, shooting me icy glares whenever I was around. Chris tried his best to make it work, to blend our lives together. We took family trips, had game nights, went out for nice dinners. But the tension was always there, simmering beneath the surface like a dark undercurrent. "She's just going through a phase," Chris would say, wrapping his arms around me. "She'll come around eventually." I wanted to believe him, but Emily's coldness only seemed to deepen with time. Our family dinners were a war zone, with her firing off snide comments and rolling her eyes whenever I spoke. Chris would shoot her warning looks, but he never truly disciplined her, too afraid of pushing her away. As the months passed, I started to see Emily's true colors. She was manipulative, playing Chris and I off against each other to get what she wanted. One week she'd give me the silent treatment, ignoring my existence. The next she'd be all smiles and charm, regaling Chris with stories of her academic achievements or volunteer work. "She's just trying to impress you," I told Chris after one particularly nauseating display. "Can't you see she's manipulating you?" But he refused to hear it, too blinded by his love for her, too desperate to have that father-daughter bond he'd always craved. Time and again he'd make excuses for her behavior, enabling it, as if his indulgence could somehow make up for the sins of the past. Looking back now, I realize I should have run, saved myself from the heartache to come. But I was in too deep, and my love for Chris wouldn't let me abandon hope. The dangerous, foolish hope that one day, somehow, Emily would accept me. Little did I know that her hatred for me ran deeper than I could have ever imagined, and that the worst was still to come. After Chris and I got married, I hoped things might improve with Emily. I was her stepmother now, an official part of the family. Surely that had to count for something. But Emily remained as distant and hostile as ever. On our honeymoon, she called Chris multiple times, always with some dramatic crisis that needed his immediate attention. When we finally returned home, exhausted, she greeted us with a look of pure disdain. "Enjoy your little vacation?" she sneered as I walked through the door. I forced a smile. "It was lovely, thanks for asking." She rolled her eyes. "Whatever, at least now you got what you wanted, a rich husband to take care of you." The words stung, but I didn't rise to the bait. After setting my bags down, I turned to leave, only to hear her mutter under her breath, "Gold digger." I whipped back around, fury rising in my chest. "You know, Emily, I'm trying my best here, but you're making it impossible." "Alicia, Emily, that's enough." Chris's voice boomed, startling us both. He stepped between us, a pained look on his face. "Can't you two get along, just this once? For me?" Emily immediately softened, her expression turning contrite. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I'll try harder, I promise." She shot me a venomous glare, then brushed past us towards her room. Later that night, as we lay in bed, I turned to Chris. "I can't keep doing this. The way she treats me." "Shh." He pulled me close, stroking my hair. "Give it time. She's been through so much with the divorce. But she's a good kid deep down. She'll come around." I wanted to believe him, but months passed with no improvement. Emily remained sullen and withdrawn, alternating between ignoring me completely and making snide remarks whenever we crossed paths. Chris insisted on family dinners, saying it would help us bond. But they only seemed to make things worse. One night, over a meal of rubbery chicken and limp broccoli, Emily announced, "I got an A on my English paper. The professor said it was the best in the class." "That's wonderful, honey," Chris beamed. "I knew you could do it." He turned to me, his eyes shining with paternal pride. "Alicia, did you hear that? Isn't that great?" I forced a smile. "Yes, that's really impressive, Emily. Well done." She narrowed her eyes at me, nostrils flaring, as if my praise was deeply offensive. "It's no big deal, just something talented people can do." The barb hit its mark. I felt myself shrink under her withering gaze. Chris, ever the peacemaker, quickly changed the subject. But I could barely focus, Emily's words echoing in my mind like cruel taunts. After dinner, as I cleared the plates, Emily brushed past me with a sneer. "Thanks for doing your job, Cinderella." I sucked in a sharp breath, fighting back tears. Why was she so determined to hurt me at every turn? What had I done to deserve such venom from her? As the weeks rolled by, the isolation and anxiety took their toll. Some nights, I lay awake for hours, my mind racing with doubts. Was I the problem? Was I not trying hard enough? If only I could get through to Emily, make her see that I loved her father more than anything. But she seemed dead set on making my life a living hell. The young woman I'd hoped to form a bond with was little more than a vindictive stranger determined to shut me out. And the harder I tried to break through, the more viciously she lashed out, until one fateful day when all my worst fears would finally come to light. As Emily progressed through high school and college, her disdain for me only intensified. She became a master manipulator, using her charm and intelligence to wrap Chris around her finger whenever she wanted something. "Daddy, can I please get the new iPhone?" She'd coo, batting her long lashes. "All my friends have it, and I really need it for school projects." Chris would hesitate, looking at me uncertainly, but then Emily would pout those full lips, and he'd instantly cave. "Oh, all right, anything for my little girl." I'd try to reason with him later. "Chris, she's taking advantage of you. She doesn't need another new phone. Her old one works perfectly fine." But he'd just shake his head adamantly. "Alicia, you don't understand. I have to make up for all the years I missed when she was growing up. Just let me do this for her, okay?" And so it went, with Emily constantly working her wiles to get clothes, cars, vacations, you name it. While we lived comfortably, we certainly weren't the millionaires she seemed to think. But Chris never put his foot down, blindly indulging her every whim, no matter how outrageous or expensive. "Stop spoiling her rotten," I'd snap at him during our worst fights. You're only encouraging her entitled, manipulative behavior. Chris's brow would furrow, anger flashing in his eyes. Don't you dare talk about my daughter that way. She's been through enough. The least I can do is give her what she wants. His words sliced through me, the implication clear. Emily's needs would always come before mine. Before us. During Emily's college years, she pulled similar stunts to earn Chris's approval, regaling him with tales of her academic achievements and grand future plans, all while throwing me contemptuous glances, making it clear I'd never be a part of that brighter future she dreamed of. I got an internship at a prestigious law firm, she announced one night at dinner, chin raised defiantly as she stared me down. They said I'm on track to be a partner after I finish my degree. That's wonderful, Pumpkin, Chris gushed, looking at her with naked pride. He turned to me expectantly. Alicia, doesn't that sound impressive? I forced a tight smile. Yes, very impressive. Congratulations, Emily. She sneered at my lukewarm praise. You could at least try to act like you care about my accomplishments. The hurt must have shown on my face because Chris immediately turned on me with a glare. She's right, Alicia. You could be a bit more supportive. My cheeks burned with humiliation as his words washed over me. What did I have to do? Grovel at her feet? This pattern continued for years. Emily constantly one-upping me and rubbing her triumphs in my face, Chris fawning over her while admonishing me for not being sufficiently awed by his precious daughter's perfection. By the time Emily finished college and began working, the resentment and bitterness had driven an unbridgeable chasm in my marriage. We could barely look at each other without dredging up the emotional scars, the unhealed wounds of two parents caught in the merciless grip of divided loyalties. I love you, Alicia, but she's my little girl, Chris would say helplessly during our worst clashes, as if those words could somehow justify or excuse the hell my life had become. I understood in a way. Emily was his flesh and blood, the living embodiment of the family he'd lost through his own failings. Making it up to her, regaining her approval, it had become his singular obsession. But at what cost? By allowing her hatred and manipulation to fester unchecked, Chris had enabled a rift that may never be mendable, a rift that would soon tear our whole world asunder. Little did I know that the worst was still to come, and that Chris's death would be the spark that ignited Emily's rage into an unholy blaze of vengeance. I'll never forget the night Chris died. We were having one of our usual tense dinners, the air thick with unspoken resentments. Emily had just announced some new career triumph, basking in her father's adoring praise while shooting me smug looks from across the table. Suddenly, Chris gasped and clutched at his chest, his face drained of color. Alicia. In an instant, I was by his side as he crumpled from his chair. Chris, oh my God, somebody call 911. Emily just stood there, eyes wide with shock, making no move to help. I shot her a pleading look as I cradled Chris's head in my lap. Emily, please, your father needs help. That seemed to snap her out of her daze. She fumbled for her phone with trembling hands and dialed emergency services. I stroked Chris's clammy forehead, murmuring desperate reassurances that everything would be okay, but his eyes had already taken on a glassy, distant look. His lips moved soundlessly as the life drained from his stricken body. The paramedics arrived and worked furiously to resuscitate him. But it was too late. Chris was gone, claimed by a massive heart attack at just 50 years old. I remember letting out a wail of anguished grief as they gently pulled me away, the love of my life now still and lifeless on the floor. Emily collapsed into a chair, face white as a sheet, looking more lost and afraid than I'd ever seen her. At the hospital, after they'd taken Chris away, Emily turned on me with undisguised fury burning in her red-rimmed eyes. You monster, she cried, her voice dripping with venom. You think you can pretend to care for me now, after everything you've done? After how you treated my dad? I recoiled, struck by the naked hatred radiating from her slight frame. Emily, what are you talking about? I loved your father with all my heart. Don't give me that crap. She jabbed a finger at my chest, her whole body trembling with rage. You manipulated him from the start, wormed your way into our lives to get your hands on his money. Tears stung my eyes as her vicious words cut deep. That's not true at all. Chris and I... Save it, she spat. I'm going to make sure you don't get a single cent from him. You're nothing now that he's gone. A lump formed in my throat as the weight of her threat hit me. Oh, God, with Chris deceased, what would happen to me? To my whole life? The next few days were a blur of funeral arrangements and grieving relatives. Emily was cold and distant, refusing to so much as look at me. I felt like a pariah in my own life, the outsider once more. Then came the reading of the will. We gathered at the lawyer's office, Emily shooting me hateful glares from across the room. When the attorney opened the sealed documents, a hush fell over us all. To my beloved wife Alicia, the lawyer read solemnly, I leave the majority of my assets and holdings, including the house, investments, and— No! Emily screeched, leaping to her feet. All eyes turned to her as she stabbed an accusing finger at me. She manipulated him. That money is rightfully mine. I shrank in my seat, bracing for the onslaught as Emily's eruption of fury washed over me in waves. The lawyer tried to interject, but she was unstoppable, years of pent-up hatred and resentment finally unleashed. You're going to pay for this? She hissed, her chest heaving. If it's the last thing I do, I'll make you suffer for what you've done to my family. You hear me? You're going to wish you never laid eyes on us. As a deathly silence descended, I knew with sinking dread that Emily's vicious threat was just the beginning. The battle lines had been drawn, and I was about to find myself in the fight of my life. Emily's meltdown at the reading of Chris's will was just the beginning of her crusade against me. In the days that followed, she launched into a relentless campaign of harassment and intimidation. That money should be mine, she'd scream whenever she saw me. You manipulated my dad into cutting me out. Her angry accusations followed me everywhere. The grocery store, the gym, even taking out the trash. She seemed determined to make my life a living hell at every turn. One afternoon, I arrived home from running errands to find her camped out on my front porch, eyes blazing with fury. There you are, you lying, gold-digging witch, she spat as I approached. Did you really think you could just take everything from me like that? I sighed wearily. Emily, please. Your father wanted me taken care of after he was gone. That's all this is. Bullshit! She shot to her feet, fists clenched. I know you poisoned his mind against me over the years, turned him against his own flesh and blood. That's not true at all, I said, struggling to keep my voice even. I never tried to come between you two. Chris loved you more than anything. Emily barked a harsh laugh. Yeah, and look where that got him, dead before his time, while you swooped in like a vulture to pick over the remains. The cruel words lanced through me like daggers. I blinked back tears, suddenly regretting my fruitless attempts to reason with her. Just go, Emily, I said quietly, before one of us says something we can't take back. For a beat, her face contorted in an almost feral snarl. Then, without warning, she lunged at me, hands outstretched like talons. I gasped and stumbled back as she made a grab for my hair, her long nails raking my cheek. You evil, manipulative bitch. Instinctively, I shoved her away, sending her staggering backwards. She caught her balance, and we stared at each other, chests heaving, an unspoken line crossed. Emily's expression morphed into a vicious leer. Don't think this is over. Not by a long shot. I'm going to destroy you. Do you hear me? Destroy. You. With that, she whirled and stormed off, leaving me shaken and nursing the welt already forming on my face. Over the next few weeks, the attacks escalated from the verbal to the undeniably criminal. My car tires were slashed repeatedly. Nasty, obscene graffiti was spray-painted across my garage door. Even a brick came crashing through my front window one night, narrowly missing my head. I went to the authorities, but they could do little without catching Emily in the act. She was careful to leave no fingerprints or witnesses, her bright future as a hotshot lawyer always at the forefront of her calculated attacks. Please, you have to do something, I begged the detective assigned to my case. She's unhinged, a complete danger to herself and others. The gruff officer just shrugged, unmoved. Look, lady, I get that you're going through a tough time, but without hard evidence, there's not much we can do about a family dispute over some money. My protests fell on deaf ears. Emily had me cornered, and she knew it. The assaults just kept coming. Vile letters filled with threats and accusations, scratches along the sides of my car, and that malicious presence always lurking. I became afraid to leave my own home, jumping at every sudden noise or movement. The stress and fear were taking a heavy toll, both emotionally and physically. Some nights, I lay awake for hours, haunted by memories of Chris's warm smile and gentle touch, things I'd likely never experience again. That's when I realized with sinking dread that Emily's revenge went far deeper than mere money or inheritance. This was about stripping me of everything: my home, my safety, my very identity as Chris's wife, until I had nothing left but the torment of her hatred bearing down like a crushing weight. Something had to be done. I couldn't go on living like this, a prisoner in my own life. It was time to fight back, no matter how ugly or painful it became. Little did I know that confronting Emily's cruelty head-on would blow the lid off an even darker, more disturbing truth, and set me on a collision course from which there could be no return. I realized Emily's vendetta against me went far deeper than just jealousy or resentment over the inheritance. There was a twisted, almost pathological hatred burning within her, fueled by years of manipulation and deceit. The truth began to unravel when I was going through some old storage boxes and came across Chris's laptop from a few years back. On a whim, I booted it up and started browsing through his files, my heart aching at every photo and document reminding me of happier times. That's when I stumbled across a folder simply labeled Emily. My breath caught in my throat as I opened it and began reading through the contents: emails, text messages, even voice recordings spanning years. Evidence of Emily's ongoing lies, sabotage, and efforts to undermine my relationship with Chris. It was all there in sickening detail. Fake emergencies and crises designed to pull Chris away from me. Exaggerated stories about me mistreating or neglecting her, voiced through teary phone calls pleading for her daddy's comfort and support. Even admissions from Emily about seeing a therapist for anger issues aimed at deliberately alienating me from the family. My blood boiled as I absorbed the damning messages one by one. So many of our marital problems, the endless fights and heartache, could be traced directly back to Emily's calculated machinations over the years. The vicious, remorseless depths she had sunk to in order to maintain her vice-like grip over Chris. When I finished reading through it all, I sat in stunned silence, tears of rage streaming down my cheeks. This whole time she had been gaslighting not just me, but her own father as well, playing us both like finely tuned instruments in her twisted campaign of sociopathic jealousy. That night, when Emily came barging into my home yet again to hurl more vile accusations, I was ready. I grabbed her by the wrist as she advanced, spinning her around and slamming her against the wall. "Let go of me," she snarled, struggling against my grip. "I'll have you arrested for assault." "Shut up and listen for once," I growled through gritted teeth. "I know what you've been doing all these years, you manipulative little monster." Her eyes went wide, jaw-dropping in an almost comical display of shock. What are you talking about?" Rather than explain, I released her and retrieved Chris's laptop from the other room, pulling up the file folder I'd uncovered earlier. Emily's eyes went flinty as she began scanning the documents and recordings, her mask of innocence shattering with each new revelation. "So this is how it's going to be," she spat, color rising in her cheeks. "You were always jealous of me and Dad's relationship. This is just some pathetic attempt to turn him against me, even in death." I could only stare at her in disbelief. "Are you deranged? Look at the evidence right in front of you. The lies, the sabotage. You had no problem deceiving and manipulating us to get what you wanted. Your own father," Emily sneered. "Please, he always took your side no matter what I did. Don't try pinning that on me." "You're sick," I shot back, disgust roiling in the pit of my stomach. "You've been playing the victim for years, but you're the one inflicting all this misery and destruction on this family." Her nostrils flared, lips peeling back in an ugly snarl. "This is far from over, you self-righteous bitch. In fact, it's only just beginning." She grabbed the laptop and hurled it against the far wall with a resounding crash, shattering the screen into a twisted spiderweb of shards. Then she whirled and stormed out, leaving a path of destruction in her wake. I sank to the floor, hands trembling as the full, ugly reality sank in. Whatever twisted psychological games Emily had been playing all this time, they had clearly warped her perception of reality entirely. There would be no getting through to her, no appeals to sanity or reason. I was well and truly trapped in her vengeful crusade. And as the ominous weight of her final threat hovered over me, I knew this was only the opening salvo of a war that could ultimately consume us both. After my confrontation with Emily and the chilling discovery of her years-long deception, I knew I had to take a stand once and for all. Her vindictive crusade had spiraled completely out of control. If I didn't put a stop to it immediately, there was no telling how far she might go. A few days later, I requested a meeting with Emily and laid it all on the line. We convened at a stuffy corporate office downtown, the air thick with distrust and barely concealed hostility. Emily swept in, wearing a power suit and permanent sneer, all false bravado and entitlement. Well, if it isn't the wicked stepmonster herself, to what do I owe this dubious pleasure? I squared my shoulders, mustering every ounce of resolve. Cut the act, Emily. We're done playing games here. Oh? She arched an immaculately groomed eyebrow. Is that so? Because from where I'm sitting, you're the one who needs to quit while you're behind. Jaw clenched. I slid a thick manila envelope across the table towards her. I have ironclad proof of your years of manipulation and sabotage. The lies, the fake emergencies, even admitting to therapy explicitly designed to alienate me from your father. Emily's bravado flickered for just a moment before her sneer returned full force. So you've got some circumstantial evidence, so what? That doesn't change the fact that he chose you over his own daughter in the end. Don't you get it? I shot back, anger rising. Your jealousy and entitlement drove a wedge between you two long before Chris died. He spent years enabling your behavior, indulging your every selfish whim. That struck a nerve. Emily's nostrils flared as she leaned across the table, eyes blazing. How dare you? You think you can psychoanalyze me when you're the one who wormed your way into our lives? Dad loved me more than anything until you showed up. I shook my head sadly. Emily, wake up. Your whole perception of reality has become dangerously warped. I'm not the enemy here. I'm the one trying to help you see the truth about yourself before it's too late. She opened her mouth, then seemed to think better of it, snapping it shut again, as her expression contorted in disgust. When she finally spoke, her voice was laced with venom. You're right about one thing. This does end today, but not how you think. She rose abruptly from her seat, knocking it over with a clatter. I'm taking you down, one way or another. Maybe then Dad's memory can finally be at peace, free from your poisonous influence. Emily, listen to yourself, I pleaded, alarmed by the maniacal glint in her eyes. You're unraveling. Whatever delusions you've been clinging to, it's time to let go. But she was already stalking away, shoulders squared and fists clenched. Over her shoulder, she spat. Don't worry, you smug bitch. When I'm through with you, everyone will finally understand my side of things. I'll make sure of it. After she stormed out, I sat in stunned silence, emotions churning. Despite laying everything on the table, Emily was too far gone, her hatred too entrenched. There would be no reasoning with her. No bringing her back from the brink of her self-destructive obsession. In that moment, I made a difficult choice. For my own safety and sanity, I would have to cut Emily out of my life completely. She had made her bed, and now she would be forced to lie in it, dealing with the consequences of her malice and delusion. I consulted legal counsel and began the process of freezing Emily out of Chris's assets and estate. The lawyers warned it would be an uphill battle, given her unrelenting stance, but I didn't care. Even if it meant draining my own funds to the last penny, I was prepared to fight her tooth and nail. True to form, Emily came unhinged when the court orders went through, locking her out of further claiming her inheritance. She launched an all-out legal war, hiring a team of vicious attack dog attorneys committed to paint me as the villain at any cost. But I was ready this time. With Chris's true legacy, the evidence of Emily's treachery and manipulation, on my side, I weathered the vicious court battles with grim determination. Time and again, her attempts to strong-arm and bully me were thwarted by cold, hard proof. The protracted legal maelstrom bled Emily's finances dry. Her shiny new career as a hotshot lawyer in jeopardy as creditors came knocking. In a cosmic twist of karma, she even faced potential disbarment as her dirty tactics and suspect actions unraveled into the harsh light. Through it all, I refused to back down or compromise. This was about more than money. It was about stripping away the twisted facade Emily had been hiding behind her whole life, forcing her to finally face the ugly reality of her own misdeeds and delusions. In the end, she brought the ruin upon herself. But I had reclaimed something infinitely more valuable than any inheritance: my self-respect, sense of justice, and the ability to move forward with Chris's loving memory intact. As the dust settled and I surveyed the wreckage Emily's hatred had wrought, I felt an unexpected pang of sadness. For all the pain she'd caused, some small part of me still mourned the loss of what could have been a real bond, a sincere connection with my husband's child. A true family united through more than shared trauma and resentment. But I knew, deep down, that dream had died long ago, poisoned by Emily's all-consuming jealousy before it ever had a chance to bloom. She had made her choices repeatedly and with malice in her heart, and now she alone would have to live with the consequences. As for me, it was time to step into a new chapter, free from the shackles of the past and filled with hard-won wisdom. Though the scars would never fully heal, I carried Chris's spirit with me, determined to honor his memory by embracing life and love once more.
Starting today, I've decided to support Amy and Olivia.
Next to my husband Scott, who returned home, was my sister-in-law and her child. My husband Scott arbitrarily decided to support them, prioritizing my sister-in-law and her child over me and our daughter. I've had enough. It's time for me to turn the tables and leave him. This is a story of how I got revenge on the worst sycophantic Scott. My name is Emily. It's been 5 years since I married Scott. Scott and I have a daughter, Luna, who is now 4 years old. Our daughter, who was born soon after our marriage, is very lovely and a treasure of ours. Scott and daughter are my cherished family. Or maybe I was the only one who thought so. One day, I was making curry with my daughter while waiting for Scott to come home. "Mom, won't Dad come back if he has power?" Dad is late today. I wonder what happened. Normally, Scott, who should return straight home, hasn't come back even after 7:30 p.m. on this day. No response with calls or messages. "Mom, I'm hungry." "You're right. Okay, let's eat without him today." After finishing the meal with my daughter and cleaning up, Scott finally returned. "Welcome home." "Wait, huh?" Next to Scott were my sister-in-law, her daughter, and an abundance of luggage for some reason. "Scott, what the hell is going on?" In a situation I couldn't comprehend, he started saying something outrageous.
From today, I've decided to support Amy and Olivia at home.
Huh? Support them? These two? I don't understand. Couldn't you have said something before bringing them here? My head couldn't catch up with the unexpected development. I managed to squeeze out some words. Support? Why all of a sudden? I haven't heard anything about it.
It was decided abruptly, so what can you do? Amy had a fight with her husband, and that's why I got a call.
Support? But specifically until when? We don't have extra rooms in our apartment. I expressed my concern indirectly, but my husband seems indifferent.
Just lend your room.
Huh? Mine?
If you move to Luna's room, then there should be enough space for Amy and Olivia.
What the hell is that? My husband casually forces me to endure. I can't understand why I should endure the inconvenience. I really don't understand. With a big smile on his face, my husband invited his sister and her daughter in, and gently told them both,
From today on, make yourself at home here.
Without so much as a sorry to bother you, the two of them barged into the house. They promptly sat on the sofa and started watching TV. I pulled my husband aside and questioned him in a hushed voice. What do you mean by suddenly deciding to support these two? Our house doesn't have the space for it. Scott sighed and gave me a displeased look.
Come on, can't you? Amy's in trouble. How can you be so indifferent? Don't you think you should at least consider helping her out a little?
No, it's not that. I don't mind them staying at our place for a while, but supporting them is different, isn't it? At least they should contribute to the food expenses.
What? Are you a miser too? Amy doesn't work, so obviously it's impossible.
This is ridiculous.
I don't care about your opinion. My important sister is in trouble. As the head of the household, I've decided to support her, so you should just follow it quietly.
With that, he started playing games with his sister and niece. Moreover, the curry I had saved for tomorrow was eaten up by my husband, sister-in-law, and her child.
Make something more nutritious for my niece.
He criticized me while pampering his sister's daughter. Had he ever thought about the nutrition in the meals for his own daughter? He was so kind to his sister's happy niece. But what about my daughter? My husband completely took his sister's side, ignoring my opinions. Instead, he treated me, who was concerned about living expenses, as stingy. Can't contribute to food expenses because she doesn't work? That's not something new. Even if they're in trouble, our house doesn't have the capacity to support them for free indefinitely. The next day, and the day after that, my husband pampered only his sister and niece, not even sparing a glance for me and our daughter.
Amy, I bought her cake because you said you wanted one.
Oh, Scott, thank you.
There was a toy of Olivia's favorite cartoon, so I couldn't resist getting it.
Wow, thanks, Uncle.
The cake is only for my sister and niece, and of course, the toy is solely for my niece.
My daughter and niece are about the same age. I think that my daughter is young enough to want cakes and toys. However, just a little more patience. If my sister-in-law and her husband make up, they will leave this house. And then, our family life will return. That's what I told myself, somehow controlling my anger. Then one day, my daughter said to me, Mom, does Dad like Olivia more than me? Huh? Because he's always kind to Olivia. Dad doesn't respond when I talk to him. Saying that, my daughter had tears in her eyes. Feeling indescribable emotions, I hugged my daughter tightly. It's okay, because Luna's dad is Papa. Even though I managed to defuse the situation at that moment, things couldn't continue like this. Later, I approached my husband, urging him to make changes. Luna is feeling lonely. It's fine to show affection to Olivia, but please, pay attention to Luna as well.
Huh? Fine, I get it. It's annoying.
Annoying? We have our own child, right? It's not Olivia, okay?
Yeah, I get it. Luna can entertain herself, right?
Despite conveying my daughter's feelings to my husband, the situation didn't improve easily. My daughter looked at my husband, who was happily playing with my niece, with sad eyes. However, my sister-in-law didn't take the place of my husband in caring for my daughter. My husband and sister-in-law were always focused on Olivia. I was the only one who cared about my daughter, but she still seemed somewhat lonely. By the time a month had passed since we moved in together, our lives were in shambles. Although I was barely making ends meet, my sister-in-law and niece had their way, and no matter how much I cleaned, the rooms were a mess, and I never had a moment to relax. I couldn't endure this life any longer. Finally, I approached my husband, and brought up the conversation. I've had enough. Seriously, think about what we are going to do in the future.
What's gotten into you all of a sudden?
We've been talking about this for a while, haven't we? Our living conditions are getting tougher. And what about Amy and her daughter? You're not thinking of living together forever, right?
It can't be helped, right? She's still having issues with her husband.
Then, you should either divorce or have a serious talk, right? It's been a month already. I've reached my limit. Please, consider the feelings of our family. Having such a conversation was sure to put my husband in a bad mood. Yet, for the sake of my daughter and the future of our family, it was crucial to have a proper discussion. Luna loves you a lot, you know. If her beloved dad is being overly kind to other kids, of course she will feel upset. I strongly conveyed our daughter's feelings more than mine. Considering he's a father, I thought if he understood how lonely our daughter must be, surely he'd change his attitude. However, what came out of my husband's mouth were unexpected words.
Amy is my sister. Your family is particularly the same. So why can you say such cruel things? You're inhuman.
Inhuman? Me? Suddenly hearing incomprehensible words, my thought came to a halt. I don't particularly dislike my sister-in-law and her daughter. I just felt that if the current situation continued, I needed to address it. Yet, my husband spoke as if I were the villain.
I've thought this for a while. You're cold. I know Amy is in trouble, and Olivia is lonely and separated from her father, so I have to take care of her. You've got your daughter with you, so you deal with it.
Wait a minute. Even though I covered all the expenses for our life, why do Luna and I have to endure this? If we are contributing to the household budget, it means it's also coming from my salary, right?
It's obvious, isn't it? Amy is my sister. In other words, for you, who is my wife, she's family. Yet you're always saying such cold things. Aren't you ashamed of yourself?
Raising his voice, my husband attacked me unilaterally, asserting that his life and Amy's life are important. He stared at me with cold eyes. To my disbelief, he even uttered words that were hard to believe.
Amy said she wants to continue living like this, and from now on, the two of us will support them. We will take care of everything, including meals and living arrangements.
At that moment, the faint hope I had clung to was instantly shattered. The idea that if we talked, he might understand, or that our previous life might return, now seemed utterly foolish. I looked straight at my husband and spoke. Fine. Then we'll get a divorce.
Huh?
My husband wore an unbelievably foolish expression, as if he couldn't comprehend my statement. After a brief silence, he stared directly at me.
Divorce? What are you suddenly talking about? It's a joke, right?
I wouldn't joke about something like this, would I? If you're going to ignore my feelings, then I won't consider yours either. I will only do what I think is best for Luna and our happiness. It seems he hadn't anticipated the idea of divorce being brought up. Provokingly, he challenged me with an indifferent attitude.
Huh? What are you talking about? Divorce? There is no way you can raise Luna by yourself, right?
Certainly. Raising the child alone would be tough, but it's much better than continuing this life.
If you are going to say that, then file for divorce. I will sign it. But if you later say, I don't want a divorce after all, it will be too late.
Did he think I would refuse? I took out the green paper I had prepared and handed it to him with a pen. Presented with the divorce papers, my husband froze. continuing to glare at me without making any effort to fill it out. What's wrong? You said you'd willingly write it, right?
No.
Clearly flustered. I forced the pen into his hand. Come on, sign it. You said you would sign it, didn't you?
No, that was just a joke.
Huh? A joke? You said it's late to say later that you still don't want a divorce. You talk a big game, but in the end, you don't want to get divorced.
Shut up! Fine. I will sign it if that's what you want.
Having signed his section, he thrust the paper toward me.
There, it's signed. Now there's no room for complaints, right? Now get out. You're in the way.
I calmly say back to him, No, you're the one who is leaving.
What?
What is not the right response? Did you forget that this apartment is contracted under my name?
Oh.
Also, ever since you started supporting your beloved sister, even though you put in money, it wasn't enough, and I covered everything. And you still wanted to continue living here? Are you stupid? Are you okay? At that moment, a voice shouted from behind, Hey, what's going on? My sister-in-law ran over to my husband and grabbed his collar. Scott, what on earth is going on? You said we would always stay here, right? Was it a lie?
Amy, it's not like that.
Don't lie. I trusted you to keep us at home forever. I don't get it. Why are you being kicked out of your own house?
I didn't expect things to get this bad.
What? Make things work out with your own wife.
What did you say?
Frustrated with the pointless quarrel between the foolish siblings, I threw their luggage out of the entrance. Hey, wait a minute. What are you doing? My sister-in-law approached me, but now that I've decided on the divorce, I have no obligation to treat her kindly. I'm just moving your belongings outside. Or rather, isn't this trespassing? Can you leave soon? I spoke in a low voice, causing Amy to shiver and step back.
Hey, you don't have to throw our belongings out.
I turned to face my husband. Hey, can you leave soon? I no longer have any use for you.
You? How dare you say that to your own husband?
I'm not a wife anymore, but an ex-wife.
I didn't think you were such a cold person.
Too bad. You stepped on my landmine. If you like that child more than your own, why not live happily together at 3?
Where are we supposed to go if we live here? Are you planning to kick us out?
I don't know. Do whatever you want. Come on, leave already. I might as well call the police. Confirming the reluctant departure of my husband and sister-in-law, I closed the door of the house. I would probably never see them again. Glancing around the room, I noticed my daughter looking at me with a puzzled expression. Mom, where's Dad? Sorry, Luna. Is it okay if it's just me and you from now on? My daughter hesitated for a moment, showing a thoughtful expression, but quickly returned to a smile. All I need is you, Mom. If I'm with you, Mom, that's all that matters. I hugged my daughter tightly as she ran towards me. Even without a husband like that, we will be fine. I'm sure we can be happy together, just the two of us. Days later, I repeatedly explained the situation and returned my husband's family's belongings to his parents' house. As expected, my husband and sister-in-law seems to have returned to their parents' house. However, it seems they were kicked out and disowned by their furious parents. They are currently living in a small apartment, rented with my ex-husband's money. Well, if that's what they wished for, it's their problem. I learned later That's the reason for the dispute between my sister-in-law and her husband was her spending habits. Now, her husband is demanding back the money she spent. I receive disgusting messages from my ex-husband almost every day.
I was wrong, so please forgive me. I love you and Luna the most. I want to go back to being a family.
Of course, I didn't respond to any of them. They went straight to the trash. My daughter doesn't want to see her father anymore, so there's no intention of meeting him. To avoid being forcibly confronted, I plan to move soon. For the sake of my daughter, I want to shower her with a lot of love. Even without a father, I hope she can find happiness in her life.
My husband hadn't lifted a finger to help with housework ever since we got married. Instead, he'd come asking for things and act like a child. Even after our daughter was born, he didn't change. When our daughter suffered from a high fever, I was frantically nursing her. I told him I didn't have time and he'd have to figure out dinner himself. He unexpectedly got mad at me.
If you dare prioritize the kid over me, then we're getting a divorce.
I didn't hesitate and gladly agreed to it. Too late now, if you regret it. A few days later, I received a frantic call from him, clearly on the brink of losing it. I'm Ada, 30 years old. I'm a reasonably successful children's book author. I used to be a regular office worker, but retired when I got married. At my husband's request, I became a homemaker, but I had too much free time after finishing the chores. So I decided to pursue my dream of becoming an author of children's books. I married Dean 2 years ago. We were high school classmates and reconnected at a reunion. We happened to sit next to each other, and after a few too many drinks, he inexplicably started weeping. He explained that he got turned down after proposing to his partner, who wasn't considering marriage. I couldn't leave him alone, and ended up taking care of him. We kept in touch afterward, and as I comforted him over his heartbreak, we started dating and eventually got married. We lived in a rented apartment together. Despite wanting to say we had a happy married life, reality didn't align. My impression of Dean while dating was that he was carefree and humorous. I wasn't wrong, but it wasn't entirely right either. It was only after our marriage that I realized he was a selfish, spoiled brat. He somehow never fully became a mature adult. He was pampered growing up as an only child with aging parents. Due to this background, he was excessively doted on. I began to realize this after we started living together. First off, he was very picky about food. Whenever I served fish for dinner, he always asked me to remove the bones and flake the meat for him. When he first asked, I thought he was joking. I never thought someone in their late 20s would seriously ask for such a thing. Since then, I always prepared the fish as he preferred. It was honestly a hassle, but if I didn't, he'd just leave the entire fish uneaten. Also, he was a fervent vegetable hater. He could manage potatoes and pumpkins, but he hated bell peppers, cucumbers, carrots, and onions, saying they smelled too grassy. I had to finally chop them for cooking, which was quite tedious. Additionally, he made a mess in the bathroom by leaving clothes scattered everywhere. He didn't even bother to fold them or gather them in one place. I ended up collecting his scattered clothes every time. I had asked him to put them in the laundry basket, but his behavior never changed. Moreover, he asked me to prepare his roomwear and towels for him. Even when I asked him to do it himself, he was reluctant and avoided it. If I left it, he wandered around the house in his boxer shorts. He lacked a sense of shame and even answered the door like that. So, during his shower, I reluctantly prepared his clothes for him. An irresponsible man like that
could never hold jobs for long. Whenever he felt a little unwell or tired, he called in sick. Even if I were the boss, I'd fire him. Plus, he wasn't able to handle criticism. A small reprimand from his boss, and he immediately quit the job. His salary decreased with every job change. Luckily, my work was going well. I was getting orders from publishers, and my royalty was increasing. So, I didn't have many complaints about our living expenses. However, because I was making money, he no longer felt any urgency to work. He was under the impression that it was all good if he slacked off at work. Whenever he had time, he just played games on the phone. He spent money on in-app purchases, even if he didn't have any allowance left. I don't mean to say playing games was bad, but he bothered me that he kept spending on unproductive leisure when he wasn't making much. Hey, I found a receipt in the trash can. Did you spend on your games again? You bought something just the other day. We agreed that you'd limit your monthly spending to $30, right? When I scolded him, he shrugged it off.
Don't get so mad. I just really wanted that limited time item. I'll try not to spend next month.
He'd casually apologize, but he never kept his word. He was a grown adult, so why couldn't he manage money sensibly? He seemed to remain a handful no matter his age. It was like I was his mother rather than his wife. Initially, I found his reliance cute and charming, but soon it became nothing but frustrating. I was stuck in a state of annoyance, but unable to take the step towards divorce, so I was troubled. Then, I found out about my pregnancy. Dean was thrilled with the news. I was genuinely happy about having a baby and had some hopes too. Maybe, if he became a father, he'd finally grow up a bit. But, to cut to the chase, my expectation was too optimistic. During my pregnancy, his selfishness didn't improve. Even while I suffered from morning sickness, he'd ask for food and laundry to be done. When I asked him to take care of things for me, he complained, saying it was the housewife's job. He didn't even help carry heavy bags when we went shopping. He was engrossed in his phone, playing games while I struggled with the shopping bags. And worst of all, when he saw my growing belly, he uttered hurtful words like,
"Disgusting,"
and
"I can't see you as a woman."
He had no regard to whose baby I was carrying. Despite being a father-to-be, his indifferent attitude made me lose my affection for him rapidly. Eventually, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Irene. After childbirth, I went to stay with my parents for a while. I gave some money to Dean and asked him to manage on his own. My parents were excited to have me and the newborn and urged me to take it easy. I indulged in their advice. But just 2 days later, I got a message from Dean asking me to cook for him. Turns out, he had blown all the money I gave him on in-game purchases. I was truly astounded by that, so I told him to figure it out himself. To everyone's surprise, he started coming to my parents' house every day to eat. He chowed down without restraint and didn't even bother to clean up after the dishes, let alone show appreciation to my parents. My parents were giving him the side eye despite him being my husband. I was utterly embarrassed by him. Even after becoming a father, his spoiled attitude hadn't changed at all, and I was still taking care of everything. There were other things that bothered me too. He started acting suspiciously. For instance, he claimed to have work-related dinner or overtime more frequently. When he returned, he smelled like soap and didn't let go of his phone. He grinned while staring at it, which creeped me out. I suspected he was cheating, but I let him be. I was fed up with him, to the point that I didn't even care about getting jealous. Then one day, Irene caught a bad cold with a high fever. She woke up crying in the morning, and her face was all red. Since it was a weekend, Dean was at home. I hurriedly prepared to take her to the doctor and asked him to drive. His reply was outrageous.
Oh no, I can't today. I have plans to meet friends. It's a long-standing arrangement, so I don't want to cancel at the last minute.
Are you kidding me? Irene has a high fever. As her dad, you should prioritize her.
You're overreacting, you know. She's already won, so she'll be fine in no time. Just lay her down in bed.
I was speechless at his prioritizing his matters over a serious issue concerning our child. Irene's cries brought me back to reality. While we argued, her condition was worsening. I didn't have time to waste. I immediately called a car service and headed to the clinic. The doctor diagnosed her with a viral cold and assured me she'd recover soon with medications. After having an IV treatment, we returned home late afternoon. Then I managed to get her to sleep after giving her medicines. I was busy looking after her, so the house was a mess. I was too exhausted and planned to clean up the next day when I had more energy. Just as I took a break, Dean returned home. He glanced at the room, frowned, and started complaining.
Hey, what's up with this mess? Can't you even clean even though you're a stay-at-home? And where's my dinner?
Fed up with his selfish complaints, I couldn't hold back and retorted harshly. I just came back from the doctor a little while ago. Can you see that I was busy? I'll clean up tomorrow. Figure out your own food.
That's unacceptable. Do your duties as a wife properly. Clean the house now and get my dinner ready.
I already told you no. I wasn't fooling around like you were. You're an adult. Stop being so selfish. I'm going to bed. I took Irene to the bedroom and went to sleep. The next day, when I woke up, Dean was nowhere to be seen. I felt it was convenient not to face him. Late that night, when he returned, he showed me a printout of a petition for divorce form.
I'm divorcing you for prioritizing our kid over me. Pack your things up and get out of here.
Staring me down, he triumphantly declared. It was ridiculous for him to easily bring up divorce just because he didn't like my attitude. I never thought he was that stupid. But in fact, it suited me just fine. Sure, let's do that. I quickly agreed and started packing my belongings. He looked puzzled by my calmness, but didn't stop me. Give me a few days to find a lawyer. I placed Irene in a pram and left the apartment I shared with Dean. On my way to my parents' place, I struggled to suppress a smile on my face. Too late, even if he regrets it now. He was on the brink of plunging into a living nightmare. Several days later, Dean, in a half-crazed state, showed up at my parents' house. He aggressively confronted me.
What the hell did you do? You owe me an explanation.
According to him, he received a notice from the management company that the rent was overdue. He also couldn't make utility payments from his account. Furthermore, he couldn't use his card for shopping. I gave him a cold stare while he was yelling and fussing. Let me ask you, what made you think that you could freely use my money as you did before? We're getting divorced, so it's obvious that access to my bank accounts and cards would be stopped. From now on, pay your rent and utilities yourself.
What? Don't act so selfish. Because you weren't taking care of me, we're getting a divorce. At least, pay me alimony.
To his ridiculous retort, I snapped back. You're the one who's going to pay alimony. You were cheating on me. He went pale for a moment and tried to play it off.
What are you talking about?
Of course, I wasn't letting him off the hook. You're planning a trip with your girlfriend, right? And you promised her to buy a designer's bag. What's her name? Mary, is it? You seem to be quite smitten, inviting her to our apartment. I had set up baby cams in Irene's room. I kept quiet about it to him because I thought he was going to object, saying it was a waste of money. On those cameras, I saw him having Mary over and getting cozy. He was even making promises for a trip and an expensive bag. So, I have solid evidence. You're the guilty party, so I'll be demanding alimony and child support. He turned completely pale and immediately dropped to his knees, begging for forgiveness.
You know I don't have that kind of money. She's married too, and it was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. We won't meet again.
He desperately explained, but it was just too late. You're ridiculous. Even if there hadn't been infidelity, I'd already run out of patience with your selfishness and whims. I'm not your mother. I'm sick of taking care of a grown-up, acting like a child.
Please, don't be so cold.
I'll say what I want now. Aren't you ashamed to make your wife take care of everything at your age? I can't live with someone who prioritizes their own stuff over a child's high fever. Upon hearing that, he flushed red and exploded. He shouted,
You darn woman,
and raised his fist. Suddenly, a loud voice echoed,
Stop it!
And my dad and brother restrained him. They are both heavyweight lifters, so restraining him was no big deal. He moaned while he had tears in his eyes.
Ouch! Please let go!
After he tried to use violence against me, seeing him cry over this was truly pathetic. I faced him and bid our final farewell. Don't ever show up in front of me again. Let's handle everything through lawyers from now on. You might struggle to handle a grown-up situation since you're not very mature. Then he was forcibly kicked out by my dad and brother. Afterward, I demanded alimony and child support through my lawyer. He borrowed money from a bad source and paid it all at once. I also went after his girlfriend, Mary. Honestly, I don't hold much grudge against her about the infidelity. If anything, I feel thankful for her being the trigger for a divorce. But in the footage from the camera, she mocked my appearance and called Irene ugly like her mom. That angered me, especially mocking my daughter, so I decided to punish her properly. I sent the footage on the baby cams to her husband, and they ended up divorcing as well. She blamed Dean, and they parted ways after a fight. Dean, chased by debt collectors, is now working deep sea fishing in the cold northern sea. It seems it'll take a while for the debts to be paid off. As for me, I'm doing my best juggling work and parenting as a single mother. Irene's adored by my family and growing up healthy. My children's books are doing well, and it's been decided they'll be serialized in the future. There might be tough times ahead, but I'm determined to overcome them without giving up.
If I were to leave you, you'd be in trouble, right?
What?
If we get divorced, you'll just end up on the street. You parasite.
My husband flicks divorce papers in front of me and threatens me as usual. You can't live without me. That's what he thinks. It's true that I'm a housewife and don't have the financial resources to support myself, but that's just for now. My husband looks down on me triumphantly. The confidence he gained from manipulating me as he pleased over the years is evident on his face. But wait, that won't be the case forever. I won't let you have your way. Understand? My name is Wendy Summer, and I'm 29 years old. I spend monotonous days as a housewife. I became the wife of the person I love 2 years ago. Thomas, my husband, was my senior at work, and he was in charge of my training. Not only was he good at teaching, but Thomas, with his good looks, was also popular among colleagues, to the extent that there was even a secret fan club for him. I wasn't a member of the fan club, but I too secretly admired him. I never intended to confess my feelings. That's what I thought, but one day he conveyed that he had feelings for me. At the sudden revelation, I couldn't speak well at the time. He called me cute and smiled kindly at me. That became the starting point, and our relationship developed, culminating in a smooth proposal after a year of dating. Family introductions, purchasing wedding rings, reserving the venue for the ceremony. While wrapping up work tasks at the office, I got deeply involved in planning for the wedding. Following my husband's wishes, it was decided that I would become a housewife after marriage. I was on cloud 9. On that day, when many people blessed us, I thought I was the happiest person in the world. I wanted to spend the rest of my life with my beloved Thomas. Since when did it change? How did a happy marriage turn into a hellish one? I think it was a minor thing. Half a year into marriage, one day, his birthday to be exact, as a housewife, unlike when I was working, I had no income, so I was using my own savings for shopping and daily expenses.
You can use any leftover monthly allowance freely.
He said that to me, but his salary isn't that high either. The allowance I receive is meager. After deducting expenses other than rent, like utilities and groceries, there's barely around $50 left. And today is his birthday. Although my husband gave me money, it somehow felt different to use it to buy his birthday present. So I decided to purchase the gift with my own money. But considering our future travels and the possibility of having children, I couldn't afford to waste money. So I set a budget of $100 and bought the tie clip he had been wanting. I also prepared homemade cake and dishes, waiting for my husband to come home. He arrives, saying,
"I'm home,"
and I greet him with a smile. "Welcome back. The food and cake are ready."
Where did you buy them?
To his somewhat indifferent inquiry, I proudly announce, "I didn't buy them. I made them myself. It's my first time, so I'm not sure about the taste." With a bit of embarrassment, I show him the neatly arranged dishes. However, he only glances at them, showing no signs of happiness. He's supposed to be delighted. My expectations were shattered easily. Thomas?" I looked fearfully into my husband's face, and he sighed heavily.
Hey, what's this? Were you planning to celebrate my birthday with this? Seriously?
"What do you mean? I prepared both the dishes and the cake."
Huh? Don't make me laugh. Did you think I'd be happy with these homemade, cheap-looking dishes?
Huh?
Oh well, I guess I'm being mocked too. For my birthday, I was hoping for gourmet delicacies from a high-end store or a cake from a popular bakery. Or maybe I expected you to take me to a fancy restaurant. Something like that.
I'm sorry. The reaction I received was the opposite of what I expected, and my heart started pounding intensely. As if flaunting it in front of me, he reached for my present and roughly tore open the wrapping paper.
What's this? A tie clip?
Well, Thomas, you mentioned wanting it before, right?
Did I say that? I don't remember.
Huh?
And this place isn't even that expensive. Don't you think it's rude to give me something like this as a gift?
My husband tossed the tie clip onto the sofa with a mocking expression on his face. Without touching the prepared food, he headed towards the bathroom. From the dressing room, his humming could be heard. Despite just having said unkind words to his wife, how could he still sing happily? But beyond anger towards my husband, a feeling of profound sadness overwhelmed me. I thought my homemade dishes and the tie clip would surely make my husband happy. If he were the kind person I believed him to be, he would have said, thank you for any gift. That's what I thought, but reality was crueler than I had imagined. Thinking back, there were many instances where I felt uneasy since getting married. If there was dust in the room, I was told to clean it thoroughly, and even about my cooking, he said, the taste doesn't suit me. Despite all this, I have been convincing myself for the past 6 months. I thought that being able to marry the person everyone admired made me a fortunate person. However, it seems that wasn't the case. Maybe my husband doesn't love me. Perhaps he chose me as a wife, simply because I was the most convenient. Maybe he chose me because I'm someone who will obediently go along with anything. That's what I started to believe. It seems my assumption was correct, because since that day, I've been oppressed by my husband every day. Whenever I did something he didn't like, he always said the same thing.
Why can't you even do such a basic thing?
I'm sorry.
Don't just think that apologizing is enough, you piece of trash. Is it okay? I'll divorce you.
Please, stop. Don't talk about divorce so easily.
Huh? Yeah, that's right. After all, if I divorce you, you won't have a face to show to anyone, right? After all, I'm the most popular guy in the company. In that sense, I've managed to get you.
In that sense?
You get it, right? As a full-time housewife, if you get divorced, you'll have nowhere to go, right? Right now, you're just unemployed. I didn't wish for you to become a full-time housewife. Normally, who'd just go along with that? You who obediently follows every silly request are the fool here.
My husband laughed and threw the completed divorce papers at me. He threatens me with divorce papers at every turn. How many times has he presented these divorce papers now? I could just throw them away, but deep down, I find it hard to discard them, perhaps because a part of me wishes for a divorce. However, the reality is, as much as he threatens, I can't bring myself to initiate a divorce. For the past few months, I've been doing remote work with his permission, but I can only work within the household, so the income and the savings are not substantial. Am I doomed to live as his subordinate? Do I have no choice but to continue as a housewife, forever living in fear of him? Faced with such a harsh reality, I found myself giving up on something within me. Then one day, something happened. A client I usually work with remotely contacted me, expressing interest in hiring me as a regular employee. To secure a safety net for the future in case something happens, I decided to negotiate with my husband, against all odds. Hey, Thomas, there's something I'd like to talk to you about. I cautiously approached my husband, who had just returned home from a drinking party. However, he seemed quite drunk, shouting, "Shut up," as he threw off his suit and collapsed onto the sofa, falling asleep. I sighed and picked up his discarded suit. Then his phone slipped out of his pants pocket. Uh-oh, what's this? The screen showed messages from someone named Rachel. The content was too intimate for mere acquaintances. Thanks for today, it was so much fun. I want to visit your apartment, Thomas, but your wife is in the way. You'll be breaking up soon, right? I'll be waiting since I'm a good girl. After reading the messages, I performed fingerprint authentication on my husband's phone, careful not to wake him. The lock was quickly released, and I checked the contents. It was filled with evidence of Thomas's affair, from messages with Rachel to photos from their dates. Unbelievable. After acting so high and mighty he's cheating? I can't forgive this. What does he think of me? I selected the most incriminating evidence and transferred it to my phone. After finishing the tasks, I woke up my husband, who was sleeping on the sofa. Wake up. Hey, wake up. My yelling startled him awake.
What is it?
He said bluntly, rubbing his eyes. What is it? Won't cut it. Don't you have anything to say to me?
Huh? What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. I know that you're cheating.
Huh? So that's what this is about?
That's not what My husband pulled out the divorce papers as usual and casually waved them in front of me.
If I decide to leave, it'll be tough for you, right?
What?
If we get divorced, you'll just end up on the streets, won't you? You parasite.
He threw the divorce papers and they hit my face. That moment, the wave of patience I had barely contained surged like a tsunami. Oh, I can't take it anymore. Living life as this man's puppet is just impossible. Perhaps satisfied with berating me, he again sprawled on the sofa and started snoring. During that time, I packed my belongings and left the house without anyone holding me back. I headed to my parents' place, explaining the situation, and decided to stay there for a while. Upon learning about my husband's true nature, my parents were furious. My father even wanted to confront him and throw a punch, but I stopped him, saying, "I have a plan." The next day, I signed the divorce papers handed to me by my husband and submitted them to the municipal office. After it was smoothly accepted, I succinctly summarized the facts and sent a message to my husband. For several days afterward, Thomas made dozens of calls.
You're doing whatever you want. I won't forgive you. You're a parasite who can't live without me.
Messages like these that I wanted to avoid flooded in. Of course, I ignored them all. Yes, everything was part of a revenge plan that I had carefully crafted. I might even marry someone else right away, but not now. Even if I'm not around, he'll continue his affair without a care in the world. No, it might become an even more blissful time for him than when I was with him. But I now have numerous pieces of evidence of his infidelity. When the time comes, I will execute my revenge without fail. With that determination in my heart, I started a new life. A year passed. In the end, I accepted an offer from a client and was hired in a position close to a full-time employee. I spent the first year at my parents' house, and only recently I began living on my own. My father and mother said,
You can stay with us forever.
but I couldn't keep relying on them. Besides, revenge against him awaits me. Once I can live independently after leaving my parents' house, I'll carry out my revenge. I decided this a year ago. With the evidence of his affair that I transferred to my phone, I consulted a highly rated law firm. There, I explained the situation and expressed my desire to claim compensation for the damages caused by my ex-husband and his affair partner. Is it possible to claim compensation for damages at this point? In response to my question, the lawyer confidently answered,
Don't worry. In this situation, the legal obligations have been fulfilled, but the discovery of the affair happened a year ago. In other words, it's a matter from before the divorce. If the affair was discovered within 3 years, you can claim compensation for mental distress.
I see. Well then, please proceed.
Yes, leave it to me.
The assigned lawyer acted swiftly, just as I had heard. He extracted key evidence from what I provided and created a certified document. 2 weeks later, I received a call from my ex-husband wondering if the documents had safely reached him. Hello? When I responded, he began to speak quickly, as if in a hurry.
Hey, what the heck is this about?
Oh, you got it. As it says there, I'll be expecting the $20,000 for the alimony fee, okay?
Huh? Are you kidding me? We're already divorced, right? So why the heck are you asking for alimony for cheating all of a sudden?
All of a sudden? What are you talking about? I've been waiting for this moment forever.
What is that?
I asked around with some former colleagues, and it seems like you're getting quite cozy with that affair woman at work, especially after our divorce was finalized. Are you getting all bold now, thinking you can flaunt it because you don't have to hide it anymore?
Well, that's...
Yeah, that's right. I had already investigated Thomas's situation at work before seeking revenge. Turns out, his affair partner is a new employee at the company. Apparently, he's been playing the victim, spreading stories about our divorce and openly getting close with his affair partner. Most of the female employees believed him because of his good looks. But I won't let Thomas get away with this. I've decided to thoroughly corner him and seek revenge. I declared it with a sense of closure, as if putting an end to the grudges of the past. and stepping confidently into the new era. Do you think you're a winner in life just because you're well-liked and good-looking at the office? Too bad. Your winning streak ends today. I'll make sure to report everything you've done to the company, like having an affair with that woman while you were still married to me, and all the emotional abuse you put me through.
Wait, if you do that, I'll...
Whatever happens to you from now on is none of my concern. Whether you fall into hell with your affair or destroy yourself, I couldn't care less. What I can't forgive is you living a normal life from now on. That's all. I'll make sure you repay the suffering I endured. Scum like you won't be able to live a normal life from now on.
Hey, Wendy, wait up! Wendy!
Interrupting his desperate plea, I unilaterally ended the call. Before he could call back, I blocked his number. Later, with the support of a close former colleague, I reported my ex-husband's infidelity to the company. The fact that I used to work for the same company and that his affair was with a new employee there made the company take my complaint seriously. As a result, both Thomas and his affair partner faced disciplinary dismissal. The affair partner, angered by the claim for damages, screamed, "It's your fault!" and slapped Thomas at work, leading to an abrupt end of their relationship. Losing his job became a setback for Thomas, and he struggled to find new employment. Now he is working multiple part-time jobs to make ends meet in a small apartment. On the other hand, I continued with my remote work and found contentment in my days. Working from home allowed me to focus on my tasks at my own pace without worrying about others. Although it ended in divorce, the experience taught me valuable lessons. Happiness doesn't solely depend on marriage. Living a life true to oneself is the ultimate happiness. Being able to once again realize that it is the greatest happiness. Without forgetting that fact, I want to continue living honestly with myself in the future. My husband insulted our 6-month-old daughter, calling her ugly in front of my parents. When I reproached him for this, he said something like this.
Huh? The fact is she's ugly, right?
My husband glanced at our baby in the crib, laughed disdainfully, and said so. I protested vehemently. She's only 6 months old. Her face will change. No matter her appearance, it's our own child, so she should be cute. Hugo looked at my emotional outburst with cold eyes.
No way my kid could be this ugly. I really wanted her to become a baby model. With this face, modeling is impossible. Truly disappointing.
Huh?
Is this really my child? Not cute at all.
10 years later, by chance when we reunited, we were shocked by each other's appearances. My name is Noelle, and I'm 38 years old. I work as a popular stylist. I coordinate clothes for fashion magazines and work on styling for celebrities at TV stations. At the age of 26, after finishing my apprenticeship, I met Hugo, who would later become my husband. Hugo, 2 years older, was a photographer employed by a publishing company and was very good looking. Hugo, you're more of a model or entertainer than a photographer. So much so that people around me say that. In reality, he gave up on being a model due to not meeting the height requirements. Hugo and I got to know each other through our work, and we ended up dating after he confessed his feelings for me. Hugo was strict not only about his own appearance, but also about the appearance of others. Even during our relationship, there were times he brought up something like this during dates.
Hey, did you see that woman we just passed? She's incredibly fat.
Come on, Hugo. It's better not to speak ill of others' appearances.
What's the matter, Noelle? You must think the same, right?
I wished for him to improve in this aspect. When I started pointing out his negative comments, he eventually stopped making them. Soon, Hugo proposed to me.
With you, Noelle, I believe we can create the ideal family. Will you marry me?
Yes, Hugo. Thank you. I accepted the proposal, greeted each other as parents, and had a wedding ceremony. A year after marriage, I became pregnant. When I shared the news with Hugo, he jumped with joy.
Noelle, you did great. Surely if it's a boy, he'll be handsome, and if it's a girl, she'll be a beautiful child. Regardless of the appearance, our child is ours, so they should be cute.
I responded with a wry smile, but it seemed like Hugo wasn't listening. Soon I gave birth. I gave birth to a healthy girl, and the two of us discussed and decided to name her Evelyn. The day after giving birth, my husband came to the hospital room and peered at Evelyn's face.
Is this really my child? Kinda has a face like a monkey.
What? A monkey? I couldn't help but react immediately. Then a nearby nurse said the following. When they're just born, everyone has similar faces, you know. I think Evelyn is very cute. Upon hearing that, Hugo seemed to nod in agreement.
Yeah, that's right. There's no way my daughter could be ugly.
Come on, just stop it already. I was exasperated by my husband's attitude. Afterward, I was discharged, and life with our family of 3 began. However, Hugo didn't help with household chores or childcare at all. He would go out, claiming it was for work, but he didn't earn much, often returning after drinking somewhere. He never even tried giving milk to Evelyn or attempting to hold her. What's even more infuriating is that he would complain about my appearance while I was busy with childcare and housework.
Hey, Noelle, aren't you getting fat? And you're not even wearing makeup.
It's postpartum. My body shape is going to change. Besides, I don't have time for makeup.
Still, you're a woman. If you're my wife, keep your appearance perfect.
As Hugo continued with such comments, my frustration with him grew. One day when Evelyn turned 6 months old, my parents came from afar to visit.
Is Evelyn doing well? It's Grandma here. Look, Grandpa brought a new toy. I wonder if she'll like it.
Speaking to Evelyn with affectionate tones, my parents interacted with her, and my daughter giggled happily.
Her face has become quite defined. Is Evelyn taking after Hugo?
Just as my father said this, Hugo immediately twisted his face.
Evelyn taking after me? Come on, please stop it, Dad. Huh? I mean, look at her. She doesn't resemble me at all. Her eyes are small and her nose is flat. Is that so? Maybe she looks like Noelle? I wonder if Noelle looked like this when she was little. At least, I wasn't this ugly, you know?
Hugo says proudly, leaving my parents in shock. I was alone, clenching my fists. To call your own daughter ugly. After my parents hurriedly left, I confronted Hugo. What do you think you're doing? Calling Evelyn ugly in front of our parents?
Huh? It's a fact that she's ugly.
Hugo glances at Evelyn sleeping in the crib, chuckling disdainfully. I protested vehemently against him. She's only 6 months old. Her face will change. No matter her appearance, it's our own child, so she should be cute. Hugo looked at my emotional outburst with cold eyes.
No way my child could be this ugly. I really wanted her to become a baby model. With this face, modeling is out of the question. I'm really disappointed.
What?
I mean, is she really my child? She's not cute at all.
The moment I heard those words, I reached my limit. Not doing housework or childcare is one thing, but criticizing our child's appearance and even doubting if she's really his own? I don't need a husband like him anymore, and Evelyn is better off without a father like this. I quietly stood up and took out the divorce agreement from the living room cabinet. I can't take it anymore. Please, divorce me. With an emotionless expression, I thrust the divorce agreement at Hugo. He seemed momentarily surprised. Then in the next moment, he showed a smile.
I did it. You're the one asking for a divorce.
Huh?
I didn't want a wife who gave me such an ugly daughter either. It's a relief that you're the one bringing up the divorce.
With that, he confidently signed it and handed it back to me. As he handed it back, Hugo said,
Now, we're complete strangers. I'll remarry someone more beautiful and have a cuter child. You guys can live miserably for all I care.
Is that all you have to say?
Yeah, that's right. I don't make much money, so I won't pay child support either. Well, good luck after I leave.
Hugo packed his things and left the house in high spirits. He didn't even bother to touch Evelyn at the end. I held my daughter and cried alone. In the end, that became the last day I saw Hugo. Afterward, I enrolled Evelyn in daycare and returned to work. With the help of my retired parents, who moved nearby, I managed to balance parenting and work. Evelyn grew up healthy, without major illnesses. 6 years after divorcing Hugo, a significant change came into my life. A man I met on the job, Fred, asked me to go out with him. Fred is successful in his career, has a high social standing, and has never been married.
Noelle, would you consider dating me with the intention of getting married?
With a serious expression, Fred asked me this, and I answered with a bit of confusion. Fred, your feelings makes me happy, but you know I'm a single mother, right? Fred responded gently.
Will you let me be your daughter's father?
Huh?
I care about you. I promise to cherish your precious daughter as well.
Fred, thank you. That evening I told Evelyn, now a grown-up first grader. Hey, Evelyn, what do you think if Mom said she wanted to remarry? Does that mean I will have a daddy? Squinting her eyes in thought, Evelyn seemed to be waiting for my next words. That's good. I want to meet him too. He's Mom's boyfriend, right? She said with a smile, and I felt relieved. The next weekend, I decided to introduce Evelyn to Fred. Although Evelyn was nervous at first, she quickly warmed up to Fred's kind personality. After several dates involving Evelyn, about a year passed, and Fred formally proposed to me. Even Evelyn said, I want to live with Dad, and I happily accepted. Eventually, Fred, Evelyn, and I started living together. Life with Fred was pure happiness. Despite his busy job, he took the lead in household chores and often took Evelyn out to play. Evelyn loved her dad very much. And it seemed like she shared things with Fred that she wouldn't tell me. Before I knew it, 10 years had passed since I separated from Hugo. Then one day, I was at a studio for a photo shoot. There I noticed a man doing equipment handling whom I recognized. As I sent my gaze in his direction, he also noticed and stared at me with a gaping mouth.
Noelle?
It was Hugo. However, his appearance had changed drastically. The once called model or celebrity in his youth had now become significantly overweight, with thinning hair, bearing no resemblance to his former self. In shock, I couldn't say anything, and Hugo continued.
Why are you here, Noelle? Are you the stylist for today's junior clothing shoot?
As I faced Hugo, my daughter ran over. Mom, what are you doing? Seeing 10-year-old Evelyn, Hugo, holding equipment in his hand, dropped it in surprise.
Could it be? You're Evelyn?
It was understandable for Hugo to be surprised. Evelyn had grown into a beautiful girl, unimaginable from her baby days. Distinctive, round, large eyes, a straight nose, a small face, and long limbs. My own daughter seemed like a doll. I'm Evelyn. I'll be modeling for today. And who is this uncle? Evelyn said while hiding behind me and giving a cautious look.
Model?
Seeing Hugo's eyes widen, I sighed and explained. Evelyn is currently a junior model. Didn't you know? She's the most popular one right now. Alternating between my face and Evelyn's, Hugo was left speechless. To him, I quietly said, Are you still working as a photographer?
Well, I haven't been doing much as a photographer. Today I'm assisting a friend who's a professional photographer.
Hugo mumbled, evasively. In reality, I knew that he had been involved with female subjects and that his photography work had declined. Well then, do your best. I casually said that to Hugo and turned away, ready to leave with Evelyn.
Wait a minute. I still have things to talk about.
Hugo hurriedly stopped us. What? There's nothing to talk about.
There is, for me. Anyway, Evelyn has become cute. Truly my daughter.
Hugo seemed to have regained his composure, grinning as he tried to reach out to Evelyn. Evelyn quickly dodged his attempt. My daughter? Mom, what is he talking about? Evelyn, this man is your biological father. Evelyn twisted her face in response. What? This dull-looking middle-aged man is my father? While Hugo was surprised, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Evelyn, you shouldn't say things like that, even if they're true. But, Mom, this man has no sense of cleanliness. He's fat, and his hair is thin. Looking back and forth between Hugo and me, Evelyn delivered her judgment, causing me to clear my throat. He didn't even bother to contact us for the past 10 years. The connection is long gone. Let's go, Evelyn. Just as I was about to leave again, Hugo grabbed my arm. Hey, let go.
Noelle, let's start over.
Huh? Looking at Hugo, I noticed tears in his eyes.
Since I parted with you, Noelle, I've been eating out a lot, and I ended up like this. I realized I can't live without you.
That's your own responsibility, isn't it? Why now?
Besides, Evelyn has become a beauty just like me. A popular stylist for a wife, a beautiful daughter who's a model. It's my ideal. Let's start over, okay?
I sighed deeply. How absurd. Who was it that said he wanted to marry someone more beautiful and have cute children?
Ugh.
Hugo, confronted with his past words, looked defeated. With this appearance, he wouldn't attract women, as he did in his youth.
Don't say that. We're a family, right? Come here, Evelyn. I'm your real dad.
Evelyn looked anxious. As I tried to shake off Hugo's hand, a voice echoed across the floor.
Do you have any business with my wife and daughter?
Turning around, there stood my current husband, Fred. Seeing him, Hugo stared with wide eyes. Actually, Fred's height is 6'3". A former model, he also has a fairly handsome appearance.
Wife? And daughter? Noelle, did you remarry?
I shook off Hugo's hand and told him. Yes. Did you think I spent the last 10 years crying over you?
You traitor.
What? You have no right to say that to me. At that moment, a professional photographer who had hired Hugo passed by.
Hey, Hugo. What are you doing? The equipment hasn't been moved yet. Wait, is that the president? Why are you here? Huh?
Hugo looked confused. The cameraman lowered his head to Fred, who was the president. Then Fred smilingly said,
Today is a special day. My daughter is wearing clothes for my brand for a photo shoot. I wanted to show my face. Please take good care of the shoot.
The cameraman hastily went into preparations for the shoot.
President? Could it be that the brand being photographed today is...
Fred smiled in response to Hugo's question.
Yes, it's a brand from my company. Is there a problem?
Hugo suddenly found himself at a loss for words.
You married the president of such a famous brand?
Yes, my current husband is perfect. You can't compete with him in any way. Saying this, I leaned towards my husband. Evelyn also clung to Fred's arm, glaring at Hugo. My dad is only this person. Go away, mister. Perhaps pushed by Evelyn's words, Hugo collapsed on his knees on the spot. After that, the photographer, having learned the situation, kicked Hugo out of the studio and terminated his employment contract. Of course, there was no way for Hugo to return to his job as a photographer. With no more equipment carrying work, he now lives in a rundown apartment and does manual labor. Even after that, Hugo contacted me a few times, expressing a desire to meet. But Fred warned him.
If you persist, I'll call the police.
After that warning, he fell silent. I feel no emotions towards Hugo, who is likely leading a miserable life somewhere. I can only hope that he'll do his best. On the other hand, I continue to lead a happy life with Fred and Evelyn. Our relationship as a couple is good. Work is going smoothly, and Evelyn is flourishing as a popular model. I look forward to continuing to live peacefully with my beloved husband and daughter in the future. Congratulations on your new baby. Here's a gift of $3,400. What? I can't accept that much. It's okay. It's a gift from me.
Thanks, Mom. This really helps.
Although we were expressing our gratitude, I felt something was off the moment I held the envelope. When I checked inside, there was no money, but something else. I was so mad, I threw the envelope into the trash can.
Hey, what are you doing? That's the money Mom gave us. Apologize to her right now.
Unaware of what was inside, my husband Ralph scolded me. Would you say the same thing after seeing this? I showed him the contents of the envelope. He trembled and clenched his fists.
Mom, don't mock us like this anymore.
My name is Brooke. I'm 30 years old and an office worker. Ralph and I have been married for 2 years. We met at a mixer. He was handsome, and I was immediately attracted to him. He seemed interested in me too, and we started dating. He was kind and had a wonderful smile. I was so happy to be with him. Being together always felt relaxing. Our relationship smoothly progressed, and we started living together after a year. We began seriously considering marriage. A year after moving in together, he proposed, and we decided to get married. I had wanted to marry him too, so I was overjoyed when he proposed. We quickly went to greet each other's parents. My parents really liked him. Well, he's very nice and works at a big company, so he made a good impression on them. I was relieved my parents approved of our marriage. Next, we went to his parents' house. I was nervous on the way there. When we arrived, his parents welcomed us.
Hello, you must be Brooke.
Yes, nice to meet you. Thank you for having me today.
No need to be so formal. We're happy to welcome you.
My father-in-law, Mark, said this with a kind smile. He's just like Ralph, I thought. Ralph's kindness probably comes from him. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, Paulina, stood straight, watching me intently. I felt intimidated by her presence. It's typical for mothers-in-law to be strict, I guess. I made sure to be polite. Mark kindly asked various questions, which made it easier for me to talk. But Paulina remained quiet. After we finished our marriage greetings, Ralph and I felt exhausted on the way back. That was stressful. Ralph, your mom is kinda scary.
Really? She's usually nice.
No, she was pretty intimidating, stern and silent.
True, she was quieter than usual. But she's basically kind, so don't worry.
If you say so. I was relieved to hear him say that. Both our families met without major issues, and our wedding went well. Many friends and colleagues attended, making it a memorable event. After our honeymoon, we started our life as a married couple. Living together before marriage meant our lifestyle didn't change much, but being newlyweds still felt new. We both worked, so we shared household chores. Ralph, having lived alone for a while, was good at cooking. We would prepare make-ahead dishes together, and whoever came home first would cook the main dish. We lived happily, adapting flexibly to each other's needs. Our rules for living together remained the same, and I was happy we could live blissfully in our own way. I thought our life would continue like this, gradually adding more happiness like having children and buying a house. However, something big happened 2 years into our marriage.
What? Dad's in the hospital?
It started with a sudden phone call. Mark had suffered a stroke and was hospitalized. Ralph and I rushed to the hospital.
Dad, are you okay? Thanks for coming, you two. Sorry to worry you. I need to be hospitalized for a while for some tests. I see.
Mark, let us know if there's anything we can help with.
Thanks. That's sweet of you to say.
After chatting in his room, we left. I'm worried about your dad.
Yeah, me too.
Let's visit him as much as we can.
Thanks, Brooke. That means a lot.
We visited him between work. The test results revealed he had cancer, with only about a year left to live. We were speechless at the sudden announcement. No, he can't be. Both of us, and especially Paulina, were deeply shocked. And of course, Mark himself must have been devastated. None of us could accept this unexpected turn of events. But we couldn't stay down forever. We had to cherish the remaining days with him. My husband and I decided to visit him every chance we got. He always seemed so happy to see us. We had a good time in his hospital room, listening to his stories. But after about 6 months, he reached the end of his life and passed away. We were prepared for it, but losing a loved one is still incredibly painful. We couldn't hold back our tears. We managed to arrange the funeral, but we cried throughout the ceremony. Mark was a well-respected man, and many people attended his funeral to pay their respects. Everyone was crying. I don't think anyone was there out of obligation. After the funeral, we were able to send him off properly. Gradually, my husband and I started to regain our strength and return to normal life. One day, Paulina contacted my husband. She wanted to talk and asked us to make time for her. So, on our day off, we went to her house.
Mom, what's going on?
Thank you for coming. I have a little favor to ask. Since your father passed away, I've been living alone, right? But I feel so anxious. What if I fall ill here and die without anyone noticing? And the loneliness of being alone. So I was thinking, Ralph, could you move in and live together?
Live together?
To our surprise, she wanted to move in with us. Both my husband and I were taken aback by the sudden suggestion. She seemed very distressed. We asked for some time to think about it and discussed it when we got home. Your mom seemed really desperate, didn't she?
Yeah, she did.
I'm okay with us moving in with her.
Really?
Yeah, it's close enough to work, and seeing how anxious and lonely she is, I can't help but worry.
Thanks, Brooke. Mom will definitely be happy.
Then, he contacted her to agree to us moving in. She seemed very pleased, which made me happy too. We then canceled our apartment lease and moved into her house.
Mom, looking forward to living with you.
Me too, sweetheart. At first, living together went relatively well. Having lost her husband, she seemed happy just to have people around. So she was initially kind to me. Thank you, Brooke, for helping with the household chores. It's really helpful to have you here. Not at all. I'm happy to be of help. She would express her gratitude to me like that. But about 3 months after we started living together, her attitude began to change. Hey, Brooke, when are you going to quit your job? What? I don't plan to quit my job. What? A wife should be at home supporting her husband. It's ridiculous for you to keep working. Have some shame. But I was shaken by this sudden change in her behavior. As she regained her strength, she started treating me terribly. A woman obsessed with her job. Not sure about that. Don't you realize that by not being a housewife, you're increasing my burden? I'm sorry. I appreciate that you take the initiative with the household chores. All I could do was apologize, but her harsh treatment continued. When will I see my grandchild? Are you not having kids because you're working? That's something my husband and I are discussing. She was right. We've been saying we want to focus on our careers for now. See, it's people like you who contribute to the declining birth rate. You should be pumping out babies left and right. Why does she have to say it like that? It seemed like she just wanted to blame me, and nothing I said mattered. She always picked times when my husband wasn't around to harass me. She was really mean, and I started to despise her. My husband was increasingly busy with work trips and overtime, so we rarely had time to talk. My mother-in-law took advantage of this and spread rumors about me to the relatives, who believed her since they had known her longer. The relatives sided with her, and they would say things like, "You shouldn't give your mother-in-law such a hard time. Is it that young people today are so self-centered?" Paulina appeared delighted to have everyone on her side. I'm so glad you all support me. I just wish she'd realize her duties as a wife. I found these gatherings unbearable. Another source of distress was my sister-in-law, Maribel. She lived alone and worked as a freelancer, only showing up at family gatherings. She avoided coming home when Ralph was around, as they weren't close. She joined her mother in bullying me. She's so delusional, still not quitting her job even though Mom told her to. She's the worst. How selfish can she be? I thought it was odd that Maribel at 28 was still freelancing and not settling down, but I had no allies here. All I could do was endure it. During this time, I suddenly fell ill and went to the hospital. I found out I was pregnant.
We're pregnant? That's awesome.
Ralph was thrilled to hear the news.
I'll work even harder. Let's build a happy family.
Yes, let's do that. Even though living with my mother-in-law might be challenging, she seemed happy about my pregnancy. It's about time. But good job. Thank you. I thought maybe she'd be kinder to me now. But I was naive to think that. Hey, Brooke. Why are you just lounging around when you're not working? I'm sorry. I've been feeling really sick with morning sickness. Not my problem. Just do the housework. Laundry, cleaning, and make lunch too. She was harsh, not caring about my condition. But I had to protect my baby and myself, so I didn't do the housework as she demanded, though I did what I could within my limits. She was furious with my attitude and kept berating me. I decided to talk to my husband about going back to my parents' house for the birth. He respected my decision, saying it was best if I thought so. Paulina opposed, but I insisted and went back to my parents' house for the birth. Life there was truly comfortable, and I realized how much stress I had been under from my mother-in-law. Months passed, and I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Ralph was so moved. He cried with joy. Holding my daughter, I felt emotional and excited about our future life together. However, I felt uneasy when I heard Paulina muttering, "A girl, huh?" After a few days in the hospital, I returned to Paulina's house. My husband took a day off to pick me up. When we arrived, my smiling mother-in-law approached me and said, "Congratulations on your new baby." "Thank you." "Here is a gift of $3,400. She handed me an envelope. "What? I can't accept that much." We were shocked. Even if it was a gift, we couldn't accept that much. Ralph also declined, but she insisted. "It's okay. It's a gift from me." I felt compelled to accept.
Thanks, Mom. This really helps.
"Thank you so much, Paulina." As we were expressing our gratitude, I felt something was off with the envelope when I held it in my hand. It felt too light. She was busy playing with our daughter. I felt something was off and took the chance to open the envelope. Inside, instead of money, there were other things. I was so angry that I threw the envelope into the trash can.
Hey, what are you doing? That was the money Mom gave us.
He was shocked and looked at me, scolding me.
Apologize to her right now.
He was angry, not knowing what was inside. "Would you say the same thing after seeing this?" I showed him what was inside the envelope. It was a bundle of receipts from a recent trip she took with my sister-in-law. They bought various things like souvenirs and brand items. The envelope also included hotel bills. It seemed like she was asking us to reimburse her for these expenses. "Oopsie! It seems I made a mistake. I meant to give you a birth gift, but I handed you the travel receipts instead. But you know, I had a lot of extra work while you were away for your birth, so I'd like you to cover these." She said this and laughed. I was just amazed at how hopeless she was. Ralph, trembling with anger and clenching his fists, said,
Mom, don't mock us like this anymore.
"What do you mean, anymore?"
I know you've been bullying Brooke.
"What are you talking about? Me bullying Brooke? There's no proof of that."
I've been busy with work and couldn't be there for her as much as I wanted, but I sensed she was troubled. But she always said she was fine when I asked, so I decided to install a hidden camera.
"What?"
The footage showed you bullying her several times. I collected it as evidence and agreed to let Brooke go back to her parents to prevent further harm. When she returned, I planned to leave the house with her and our daughter.
"What? You're kidding, right?"
No, I'm not. Brooke is more important to me than you. Now that we have a daughter, I can't take care of you anymore. Maribel is there, so I'm sure you'll be fine without me.
"Don't say that. I apologize for being harsh to Brooke." She was panicking. "Please, forgive me, Brooke. I'm really sorry." She apologized to me, but I couldn't forgive her anymore. "I can't trust you anymore, so you don't need to apologize. I'll use the evidence your son collected to sue you for the emotional distress you've caused." "What? Please, tell me you're joking." "No, I'm serious. You pushed me to my limit." She slumped into heat. My husband and I packed our belongings, left the house with our daughter, and put our stuff temporarily at my parents' house. We then rented a new place and moved in, cutting off all contact with my mother-in-law and making sure she didn't know where we were. We sent a formal notice and sued her for damages. When Maribel called my husband, furious, he told her she would also be sued, and she went silent. We stopped attending family gatherings. However, a kind relative who had always been nice to me secretly contacted me and told me that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, faced with the lawsuit, were now asking relatives for money. The relatives quickly distanced themselves from them. The two, known for their wasteful habits, had quickly squandered my father-in-law's inheritance and were now trapped in a cycle of debt and overspending. They were desperately working part-time jobs to repay their debts, but their spending habits only increased their debts. Serves them right. In contrast, my husband and I were happily living together, watching our daughter grow. From now on, I'm going to talk to my husband immediately if something comes up and make sure we face problems together as a couple.